Going into Job this morning. It's a tough book for me. I don't know about you. It's a tough book for me in that Job goes through a lot. And tragedy hits Job not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 times in a row. Job loses everything he has. The first story, a servant comes running up. All the oxen have been killed. All the servants too. I was the only one to escape, and I wanted to come and tell you what happened. And then the camels are stolen, and the servants killed. And then there's more devastation in his fields and with his livestock. And then he gets the biggest of the tragedies. All his children have been killed. Something like a cyclone had come through, hit all 4 parts of the house. All the children were over at one of the brothers' house for a feast. Gone. This all happens in a few verses. And what makes it so tough for me and what Job goes through, this is not a story of a man reaping what he sowed. This is not something Job brought on himself through his actions. We learn several times in the opening chapters, Job was without sin. And we have these tragedies, and it's hard to understand. And that's a part of the mystery of God that I don't understand. I don't know anybody who's written about it who understands, but I rarely know as much as the person in charge, whether it's at work or whether it's in my life and God leading that. But Job is the story for all of us. So many of the books of the Old Testament, how does it start? It starts with the lineage, where that person is in the lineage and who comes after. It happens in almost all of them, but in Job, it starts with, this is a story of a man. That man is us. The book asserts the worth of a person, the worth of you. It's not your capacity to produce goods. It's not your ability to improve the world. A person is not valued as a thinker, a philanthropist, or a practitioner of religion. Although Job had all these qualities, in this book, a person is valued by what's on the inside. And we see other stories throughout the Bible of affliction and pain and other things. But it's what's on the inside that God's concerned about. It's what's on the inside that Jesus was worried about. You know, I think back to the storm on the boat. Jesus knew the condition of all the souls of the disciples in that boat, but they were scared, and Jesus was able to sleep through it. And that's the thing of beauty in the God that we serve and who Jesus is, that he can remain calm when we are in turmoil, and we know that he's in charge. And what an action-packed book we have in Job. This was probably written several thousand years ago BC, parts of it anyway, not compiled completely until probably 500 BC. And in this ancient story, we have narrative, we have dialogue, we have hymns, we have drama, we have prayer, we have oration, we have lament, we have proverb, and we have oath. And the reason this story is for all of us is this is going to happen at some portion to all of us. Tragedy, grief, loss. I've always chalked it up to it's a fallen world. We sin, others sin, and this is what happens. But it also happens to who we deem the innocent. Job qualifies as innocent in my book. I think of every time we're watching TV and a St. Jude's commercial comes on. It rips my stomach to shreds at what some of those children are going through. Why would a child be put through that? I think of my friends coming back from war. Where was God in that? It's a hard question to answer because you know where God was. He was there. But what you can answer is, why did he let it happen? Why did we see what we saw? Why did people do what they did? I don't know. But I do know several things from Job that are very helpful. One, we learn what friendship looks like and what friendship doesn't look like. In Job's grief, 3 friends visit him. And in traditional Hebrew custom, they sat with Job and mourned his loss 7 days and 7 nights. But a friend in this time of tragedy, we're looking for someone who shows up, who's there, who comforts and supports us. And these 3 friends were not good friends to Job as the mourning ends. Job, this must have been something you've done. Job, maybe you did something unconsciously or without knowing that brought this on you. The friends become as much of an adversary to Job in these opening chapters as the actual adversary himself, who is listed as the adversary in the Bible. It's so far back, we haven't labeled things like devil, Satan. The sons of God come down. Those are angels. This is very, very early. And they're trying to sort through some things that even the wisest can't understand. And it comes about in conflict. It comes about as something not of comfort, not of support. And it has to wear on Job because Job replies in great detail. I didn't do that. You're wrong. I don't know why this is happening. It's happened. But I have not been an adversary of God. I don't even know why he's taken so much interest in me. But I didn't do wrong. But we also, after we see what friendship should be, what it is not, and we've already alluded to it in chapter 42, what friendship becomes, and a good example of that. This book also illustrates the way God works. He does not forget his people. And God acts at the proper time to set things straight. It is a story about a righteous man. And we can see parallels in Job's story, in Jonah, and Daniel, and Noah, and Abraham, and Jacob. And it's sometimes easier to understand illustrations when we look at what happens with Abel or with Enoch and their righteousness. And they do answer a lot of facets about God, his righteousness, and the righteousness of people. But Job, we get a lot of details. Suffering was a test that God allowed. The adversary came to God and told God, yeah, Job's faithful. He worships you. Look at all that he's got. He's got 10 children. That's what everybody in that time wanted. He's got livestock all over the field and lands. Of course he worships you. He's got it all. It's easy to worship you when you have it all. I bet if Job didn't have all that stuff, he would curse you. So God allows the adversary to take it all. Job does not curse God. He remains faithful. So the adversary comes back to God. Well, maybe if we gave him these illnesses and this aching and this pain, then he would curse you. And God put limits on what the adversary was able to do. You can do everything but kill him. And that's what happens to Job. He sits there covered in sores. He's even terrorized at night in his dreams. His wife says, why don't you just go ahead, curse God, let him kill you, and it'll be over. What's the point? We've got the three friends who aren't much help. The wife's like, curse him and get it over with. Job's confused. He doesn't understand. But he's faithful. And he stays true. And we see a lot of themes of testing in Scripture. You've got Adam in the tree. You got Jacob's wrestling with the angel. Abraham and his sacrifice of Isaac. Joseph and Potiphar's wife. It's a tough story, though. Because what do you do when there is such affliction that you can't explain? Well, we talked last week that the positive in Revelation and what John wrote was we know that God wins in the end. And through our salvation, his win's our win. And Job does hit a critical moment in chapter 42. And as we open with verse 10. This man's lost it all. His kids are gone. He's got sores. His mind's afflicted. He's suffering. But he didn't curse God. He didn't lose his faith. And even in his time of pain, he prayed for his friends. And when he prayed for his friends, he was restored in God's timing and at the right time. And through that restoration, he not only gets all his livestock, all of his camels, all of his lands. His blessings are twice what they were before. And he didn't have to get his 10 children brought back to life. He's going to see them again in heaven. And that's the beauty of that as well. Something that he loved so much and was taken from, he will see again on the other side. And our lesson this morning, they're eating bread in Job's house. That lets you know that Job has been restored to a patriarchal position and a position of influence in his area. Gold and silver, a respect of honor and position in the community. Job's also a man of equality. We read that he left his inheritance to his daughters and his sons. The only time daughters got anything in this time was if there were no sons born. Job distributes his among them equally. And one of the beauties of the story that we may overlook in verse 16, and this, Job lived 140 years. He saw his children and their children to the 4th generation. Jewish tradition, it was important that the patriarch of the family have influence and be in the lives of the 3rd and 4th generation of their offspring. So Job gets back everything that he lost. It's doubled. His friends are back. They pay honor to him through gifts. They pay honor to him by breaking bread in his house. Scripture records that the 4th generation, he was there for that. And while there's so much about our world and what happens that we can't explain or don't understand, let us remember to pray for our friends. to be an example of what a friend should be in a time of pain and despair. Someone who shows up, someone who is there, someone who comforts and supports. We need to be that to our friends in their time of need. We need our friends to be that to us in our time of need. And we know in the end, our faithfulness and belief is not wasted. We win in the end. We won in the end last week. We win in the end this week. Job won. 140 years he got to live this restored life. And God blesses in multiples. And there's no way in our giving to a friend, through prayer, through being there, through comforting, that we can also be a blessing and receive a blessing. This can all happen to us. Tragedy, pain, but restoration and victory as well. So I close this morning with one important element to remember. Let us always keep our eye on God and not the clock, because at the right time, God restores. Thank you for